Hello again, everybody, and it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce a person with one of the best names in our industry by a long way, Rick Wolf, who I'm sure many of you know already, who is Senior Vice President of B2B Partnerships at Spotlight Sports Group. Rick, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Jake. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Spotlight.
Yeah, no problem at all. Great to have you with us. We've had a really good, engaging session so far, and it's really going to be interesting to speak to somebody, obviously, with your background. For those that don't know, Rick has one of the most amazing track records that I can recall, certainly, in the kind of US sports media landscape. Perhaps you could just give us a really quick summary of it, because we've only got 15 minutes. But yeah, your background is amazing, so let's hear about it.
Yeah, I would say quickly, I call myself the Forrest Gump of sports, because I was lucky enough to be in the right rooms where really, really smart people were executing some really amazing things. So, starting with being able to write the first software for fantasy baseball in 1989 with IBM, and then being on the team that founded and started Sportsline USA, which became CBSSports.com after a public offering in 1997, and then being the one who pushed RotoWorld.com out to be a destination site in 2001, and then having it be bought by NBC in 2006, and then being able to be on the ground floor of really the rebuild of NBCSports.com and NBCOlympics.com in those next 5 years. And then, of course, the most recent journey, which has been a fantastic one since 2014, the Alarm Sports Network, sort of building the infrastructure for NBCSports.com and Edge, and helping them get that off the ground in 2019. And to be a part of this big organization now after an acquisition in September of 2021, being acquired by Spotlight Sports Group, and now being part of something that is just super exciting to be in that room with a lot of smart people and my 75 IQ.
Yeah, for sure. You're too modest, Rick. You didn't get a career like that just by being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, you mentioned how exciting the environment is right now, and that's obviously what we've come here to talk about today. And one thing that's really important for Spotlight is kind of how you redirect customers into those big online sports books that we've talked about. As we know, a lot of US operators or media businesses have a big engaged database of daily fantasy sports, DFS players, which I know is something you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
How can you, or rather your clients, monetize that engaged audience and kind of get them to take that leap from DFS and into sports betting?
Yeah, well, one of the things about what we do is it's all custom. So it depends on who your audience will take it'll analyze your audience, and then we'll figure out how to get there. And if you think about it, every sports fan is either a casual fan, a team fan, a fantasy fan, a gambler, a historian, or a collector. Okay, basically you're either one or all or a lot of those. And so what we do is we custom look at your audience, we figure it out with your Google Analytics and other things, and then figure out how you can maximize how to make revenue from this by driving people into sports betting. And then honestly, after that, the sports betting houses will be driving them to iCasino. So iGaming. So we'll be driving them directly to iGaming in a lot of cases from each one of those different sports verticals. So.
Okay, that's interesting. So even if you have, sort of sports-led network, sometimes you'll be driving the consumers straight to iGaming rather than sports betting.
Yes, yeah. Well, it depends on the audience, right? So, and if the audience, let's say if they're casual fans, so basically, they're just watching to see whether or not, what LeBron is doing tonight. Then we'll take those news items and then we'll drive them directly to iGaming affiliation for what that audience is. So what I've said since the beginning here, and it's actually something I stole from Peter Naughton, who founded Sun Microsystems. He said every web war will be won by content personalization and interactivity. Okay, so you want to be at a place where you feel like you belong. So we create ecosystems that allow people to feel like they belong, and then we can monetize them in different ways, whether it's sports betting affiliation, iGaming affiliation, or subscriptions, or straight advertising. So we help you get that ecosystem together so that you can drive all of those monetization mechanisms, and then we either share in them or you pay us development fees.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that kind of sense of belonging is what sort of elevates the end user experience and the customer experience, and that's what generates that brand loyalty, which I guess is what you and a lot of your clients are striving for in the US. it's such a saturated marketplace though, with a lot of different media sites, be it affiliates, be it traditional news written content media. How do you kind of compete in that marketplace, and what are you doing to ensure there is that level of trust there?
Yeah, well, the most important thing is to be able to differentiate, is to be able to understand the pain points and the difficulties that people may have within their businesses, and then help to solve them. So business development is basically a problem-solving game. So our ability then to get bigger clients who have difficulties generally with speed to market or with not having built software as a service. So we make sure we build both of those two things so that we can put the tools into administrators' hands instead of putting those tools into developers' hands, because developers' time is so critical at media companies that it's very difficult to get those. Plus security is so important. And we have that all buttoned up on the software as a service that we don't have to you don't have to have people, waiting weeks or months in order to make sure that they can develop and launch a product. We can basically give you the tools to be able to deliver it instantly.
Yeah, no, of course, that makes perfect sense. And I think, while there's a lot of priorities for these US operators at the moment, there's definitely that makes an opportunity for kind of third party technology suppliers, B2B providers, because they can't possibly do everything at once. It's a kind of Herculean task to manage that technology journey. And we've heard time and time again, technology is a major hot topic in the US industry right now. I mean, you've got the kind of proprietary versus third-party debate, and whether companies should be spending huge money on bringing some technology companies in-house so they can kind of get better control of that tech and product journey. But for those that aren't quite able to do that, how can you kind of help them out with that tech and sort of take on some of the heavy lifting?
Yeah.
Their load?
Yeah, well, the key thing is in two words: self-service. So if we create an infrastructure for you that attaches to your WordPress, or we build the ecosystem for you to deliver your content and other services through us, we can then add onto that a tools maker, which allows administrators to create their own tools online, and we can add a games maker, which allows them to create their own games. For instance, just recently for a client, they thought they might want to try an Oscars game. So we had the game engine put on that. We had an administrator go in and type in some questions, and within 20 or 30 minutes, we had an Oscars game live on their site for people to predict what was going to happen at the Oscars. Not that anyone could have predicted what actually happened at the Oscars, but no, we didn't have a question that said, is Chris Rock going to get an open hand slap in the face? No, we didn't have a question that asked that. But we did have,
the algorithm didn't quite work that well.
No. But we did have, who will win Best Actor, who would win Best Actress, and those things, so people could have a fun game to compete with each other for a small prize. I think it was $100 US. But that's the kind of engagement that creates, and then think about how that can directly affiliate to iGaming as opposed to sports betting. As the sports properties with huge media presences can then use these self-service games and tools in order to be able to drive affiliation to whatever they want to affiliate, whether it's apparel, tickets, iGaming, or sports betting. Now, we're focused on sports betting, but those other areas might be the focus of those media companies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And obviously, that leans into the kind of gamification and loyalty discussion as well. And, these nice free-to-play games that aren't perhaps, directly related to sports betting or iGaming can be a really nice way to achieve that. Like you've just said with the Oscars piece, I never would have thought that would be possible to come up with in such a short space of time. But I guess that leads on to my next question, which is interesting. People think about affiliates or media companies, and they kind of think there's this portfolio of B2C websites that kind of tell you how to sports bet, where you can get a sports bet on, what the offers are. And I know there's a lot of brands in the Spotlight portfolio that do that, but it sounds like you guys offer a much more comprehensive package of services that are very different to that as well.
Yeah, I mean from the things we did, I talked about the self-service stuff, but we also have smart content modules. They're what a lot of people in the industry call widgets, but because they contain content that's bespoke, that's written by our staff, and not by an AI engine. So it's way more human focused. Like an AI engine can't know exactly whether or not a particular athlete had a fight with his girlfriend on a particular day, where our analysts know that, and we know that might affect the performance, or we know how it affected his performance previously. So we believe that there's a manual effort that needs to go into these, and so these smart content modules are available for team-based for all sports, and by June 1st they'll be available for players for all prop lines as well. So we'll have player information projections against the prop lines, and then also some skinny information written by some humans.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's great that there's still a place for that kind of manual legwork and that actual research that takes place, and that we're not just completely relying on AI or because there's nothing quite like human interaction. Like you say, that's where the edge comes from, right? In betting is when something that the market doesn't.
AI is fantastic. I mean, I was on the advisory board of Automated Insights, so I understand like how important it is and how you can do like 99% of it with that. But having that information put in front of a human so they can vet it and then add the 10% or the 5% is where you get to 100%, where the AI engine can't get there all by itself. Believe me, we use NLG and we use AI to press in front of people before that information goes in. And that way that allows us to license that stuff from other people who do it well too, so we can aggregate all of the good AI information in front of a human who figures out which ones to use.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's sort of the perfect combination, really, when you've got a lot of the technology doing the hard work and then the human mind sewing it all together at the end. That's perfect. And then just to go full circle and link back to something you said at the start about, I think it was the 7 different categories of sports bettors. Collectibles is one of them. Which one are you?
Which one am I? I am obviously a fantasy and sports bettor. And have been for a very long time. I mean, with Sportsline USA, we started Vegas Insider there in '96. So we were initially a sports betting company, and I was a big bettor in the late '90s, early 2000s. And of course, fantasy is in my DNA. But I'm also a collector, just a trading card collector, not an NFT collector. Although we did do some eTop stuff in the early 2000s. That was the early generation of NFTs, if you will. But just trading cards. For the most part, and just not that much of it now, but we just have a whole bunch of them, probably 20,000 to 30,000 baseball cards. So
that's awesome. And where do you that trend looks like it is very much heading into the digital space. I mean, and linking with fantasy sports as well. There's a lot of, all the big franchises, MLB, etc., trying to work out how they can capitalize on this NFT technology with basically virtual trading cards. I mean, that's not something that you've dabbled in just yet.
No, not yet. As far as purchasing them, other than a couple dabbling into Top Shots, just to really check out to see what it was like buying a couple NBA moments for Giannis. But I think NFTs are here to stay, and I think crypto is definitely here to stay. And anybody who thinks it's a fad is, it's been here too long, and it's now taking over. Countries are having cryptocurrency be their sole method of currency, and I think we'll just see as we get more in a global economy that's going to be a thing, and the non-fungible token element of it used for all sorts of things. I don't know if you're familiar with Fan Control Football, but Fan Control Football League has the ability for you to use their tokens for each team. There's 8 teams, and then you have the ability to make all the decisions, including what play call is going to be made based on your voting shares, your number of tokens that you own in a particular team.
That's fascinating. And yeah, our managing director, Pierre, will be delighted to hear that you think NFTs are here to stay. He's a big bull on those kind of technologies. So yeah, but I mean, so Rick, thanks a million for joining us. They're all the questions that I had for you today. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to get across just before we go, either from a personal perspective or from a Spotlight perspective, obviously.
No, I mean, the one thing that I've learned, and like I've only here 7 months with Spotlight Sports Group, but number one, they're the greatest people in the world, which is fantastic. You always want to work with high character, smart people. So, and that's what I try to surround myself in the whole rest of the career leading up till now. But I will say, like, whatever problem you have, like we now have so many resources where before it was just sort of our creativity and then our elbow grease. We now have so many services and things that have been created for a company that has its roots in horse racing and with the Racing Post, and delivers information to 7,300 betting parlors across the UK and Ireland, and just has the resources and ability to solve any of your problems. So whatever your problem is in the sports business, Spotlight Sports Group is your solution.
Perfect. Thanks again for joining us, Rick, and I'll catch up with you soon, I hope.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jake.